by my window.
He passed Stalin, cheated Beria, Zhukov. I do not approve a political strike. Well, it's never clean. For all that, he had a naivete. He thought that if you explained, the person would understand you, and further, all would be as it was necessary.
Вот вышел этот курский крестьянин. Так разве он похож на того крестьянина, который был в Курске 40 лет?
Here is this Russian peasant. He is really similar to a peasant 40 years ago. He is a new person. And our hogwomen, these hogwomen and hogmen are new people who are born in our country, in our village. With these people you could do anything, if you only understand them and you are able to work with them.
Если только правильно понимать и уметь, так сказать, с ними работать.
He loved Ukrainian nature very much. He even brought to Moscow a tape recorder.
Near Washington and Banksville, there is a science center of the United States Ministry of Agriculture, where chairmen of Ministerial Council of the USSR and accompanying persons were invited. Visitors were acquainted with the interesting works of a cattle breeding station. The best cow of the United States gives 10,204 kilograms of milk in a year.
Khrushchev has an idea that we should feed people, and to receive meat and milk, it is necessary to feed cattle. After conversations with American agricultural experts and reading their agricultural books on a regular basis, he came to a conclusion that without corn, soya, and peas, it is impossible to have enough forage required to feed cows, pigs, and so on, in a quantity necessary to have enough meat.
How can Nikita Sergeyevich be indifferent seeing such beauty? She is really a queen.
Problem of corn. The first, new culture, nobody accepts it, as nobody accepted potato in the days of Ekaterina II. We sowed grasses, oats, and gathered a crop. We were used to this. And corn is to be processed continuously, 3 to 4 times for a season. People were not used to this. Plus, the centralized system. Khrushchev asked for a report. They sowed. Then everything was weed-filled.
Father of Mum's husband told me that before a plenum of the Central Committee, he was called and told, Yevgeny Vyacheslavovich, I have a small request to make. Do you know how to find as many citations as possible from Lenin's works where he speaks positively about corn? There was only one phrase in Lenin's works, that Indians in Northern America sowed corn and ate it. This culture was named a maize, nothing about corn.
I was in Finland recently and met the former Minister of Foreign Affairs from Khrushchev's time. Now he is a farmer, and earlier he was a farmer with a big herd of cows. And he said, when Khrushchev arrived, they talked about a diplomacy. Then I told that I am a farmer, and he asked about feed. I feed with a hay. Do you grow up corn? No. I'll send you seeds. His assistant, Shevchenko, brought these seeds, a manual planter, and we planted corn. It grew. I began to feed with corn. It was in 1965. Khrushchev was still a politician. When Gosigin arrived, I invited him to me. He saw the corn and said, "Why do you plant corn? Khrushchev is not here. We allowed not to plant." He laughed that Khrushchev forced him to plant corn in Finland.
And where the sun gave tremendous heat and where it burnt down unmercifully, a wonderful corn came up on the school site of Voronezh pioneers. Fine business, helped to a collective farm, started by Stavropol schoolboys, was joined by millions of our country. Horse is tall, and a horseman is not small, but a corn near Moscow is high.
Конь рослый, всадник немал, а подмосковная кукуруза выше.
All Germany is set by corn, also for a forage, and it does not grow ripe, too. Khrushchev brought it and gave to a politician. A politician planted it, then called Khrushchev and asked for more corn for his neighbors. And further, there was what we name today food safety. If you have forages, you will have your own meat. When Khrushchev was dismissed, we began to buy grain and to sell oil.
Продавать нефть, при Хрущеве нефти не было.
At Khrushchev, only once grain was bought for gold when there was a terrible poor harvest. We sold oil, bought grain. It was not a food grain. It was to feed pigs and cows.
Nikita Sergeyevich loved land, loved people who worked on land, and appreciated people who knew this land very much. He loved roses, apple trees, cherries very much. Now, on highway, Rubivskoy, and near the university, you'll see remains of old apple trees, which were planted under his order.
Many people who were friendly with Khrushchev addressed him as Nikita. After Gorbachev was named Gorby in Germany, but it's because he was such an impressive and very simple national figure. He spoke fluently, but with too many details.
How old are you? 39. 39. Молодой человек. You're a young man. A young man. I'm aging. У меня сыновья постарше уже. I've got sons that are older. Да, и поэтому я говорю, что вы, видимо, плохо историю знаете. And therefore I say that you evidently are, you do not have a very good knowledge of history. Когда совершилась Октябрьская революция, when the Great October Revolution took place, тогда к нам высадили десант, Америка. Военный десант. Then a military landing party was Англия sent into our country by the United States, Britain, France, Германия, Germany, и Япония, and Japan. И они нам навязали гражданскую войну. Белогвардейцы, генералы царской армии, подходили к Туле и к Москве. The White Guard, the Tsarist generals, were advancing on Tula and забрали Сибирь. Вы помните этот жест, который... Это потом, когда надо, сейчас не требуется. When that is required, we'll come to that, but it's not required now. Да. Забрали Сибирь. They occupied Siberia. Захватили Украину. They seized the Ukraine. Захватили Белоруссию. They seized Belarus. Подошли 150 километров от Москвы. They were within 150 kilometers of Moscow. Русский народ. But the Russian people. Украинский народ. The Ukrainian people. Белорусский народ. The Belarusian people. Все народы Советского Союза. And all the peoples of the Soviet Union. Взяли метлу, смели всех в океан. Took a broom and swept them all into the ocean. Американцев. The Americans, the British, the Japanese, the Germans,
Nikita Sergeyevich had a feature. He read text. When he was bothered with it, he put it away and continued without the text.
I would tell to the representative of the United States of America government, you have a very good friendship with them, and you consider the best regime which now exists in Franquist Spain. Who is Franco? He is an executioner of Spanish people. He crushed a parliament and overthrew a legitimate government.
There was a well-known joke about an elephant in a newspaper that went, is it possible to wrap an elephant in a newspaper? Well, yes, if Nikita Sergeyevich's speech is published there.
Ноябрьский пленум, полагаю, проведем без Никиты.
Понимаете, Брежнев, он...
You see, Brezhnev is a lovely, weak person, and he, whom Khrushchev put forward from 1938, dismissed him.
Хрущев выдвигал, тянул с 1938 года.
To have justification for such a person, it is necessary that he hates from all his soul the person whom he made muck to. Only in this case, he feels right.
Чувствовал себя правым. И думаю, что к 64
I think that from 1964, he began to hate Khrushchev.
Этого не может быть. Потому что не может быть никогда. Вот перечисли. Повтори, кого ты мне назвал?
Игнатов.
Так.
Подгорный.
Так.
Брежнев.
Так.
Семичастный Шелепин.
Ну, Игнатов, может быть, он всегда всем недоволен, один такой петух. Всегда нужен, он заметен. Но Брежнев с Подгорным, того быть не может. Я же их из дерьма вытащил. Они мне по гроб жизни должны быть обязаны.
Plenum of the Central Committee of the CPSU met Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev. Request to leave post of the first secretary of the Central Committee of the CPSU and chairman of the Ministerial Council due to old age and poor health. The plenum elected first secretary Leonid Ilyich Brezhnev.
Подожди. Ну что ты, Никита? Еще не все потеряно.
Все. Они меня от связи отключили, мерзавцы.
The sunburned
All system of fear incorporated by Stalin was not destroyed. It was only undermined. The father lived as though under supervision in a summer residence which was provided to him.
But there was a security. Khrushchev joked. It was not clear if he was protected from people or people from him. The first days after resignation, he decided to go somewhere. It was before the 7th of November, and his car was watched. Where he went, to the Kremlin or somewhere else, or he would escape.
Certainly, he could solve nothing. He absolutely interfered with everything.
Everything was listened. Listening devices were not of high quality. One was in a bedroom where he usually dictated. And people from the KGB lived in the next small house. There were 3 small wooden houses on the territory. Silent music suddenly started to play from our party. I told, "Father, music plays somewhere. I shall go and look." Music was immediately switched off.
In a practically anecdotal case, he came into a toilet, made a corresponding sound, and suddenly heard laughter. He looked back, knocked on the wall with his fist, and said, "Well, isn't it possible to even fart in here?" In the 60s, everybody's hobbies were photo and film amateur shooting.
Кадр 29, дубль 2.
It's not easy to transfer a slice of real life on a film.
Where Nikita Sergeyevich arrived, he was presented with movie cameras. In 1962 in Sweden, he was presented Case 2. When Nikita Sergeyevich was dismissed in October 1964, Sergey took me to him and asked how to work with this device. Nikita Sergeyevich found a nature with me. Before he knew how to photograph and had certain priority. We went with him to flower beds with very beautiful flowers. On a road, he stopped near a spreading tree. In my opinion, it was a pine. Said Nikita Sergeyevich, "Now it's already the second half of the day and we shall not have time to make photos of the flowers. It will be darkish." He didn't agree and began to make photos. When he finished shooting, I looked and saw a spreading tree, which as well went from a bottom upwards. There was an improbable depth and stereoscopy, and a bird sat in the foreground. And everything was crowned with fluffy clouds. I asked if he made this incidentally. Why? Don't you see how beautiful it is? I made photos of a governmental reception with Kosygin and Brezhnev. And suddenly, from a table of the Presidium, where they drank, Leonid Ilyich suddenly approached me and asked, "What are you doing here?" Leonid Ilyich, you see, I make your photos. If you are interested, I can bring them to you to show or to present. And what do you do in the summer residence? Nikita Sergeyevich is on pension. Nobody comes to him. I help him to have a rest. We make photos. He advised me not to be overzealous. Naturally, I told about it to Nikita Sergeyevich. He said, "I do not understand it." He surrounded me from all sides, both by microphones and people. Why is he afraid of me?
Our movement to communism measures the last 10 years by the speed of space rockets. On behalf of our Starways Pathfinder, Yuri Gagarin, an image of our contemporary rises.
Once he asked me to invite Gagarin. I called Yuri Alexeyevich and said, "Yuri Alexeyevich, Nikita Sergeyevich invites you. Could you arrive to him?" Well, he is bored there. And he loves you very much. He promised to give an answer next time. Then said it was necessary to wait. When I talked about this invitation to Sergei Pavlovich Korolyov, he said he was forbidden. Yuri was a very cautious person.
Am I happy going on a flight into space? I certainly am. I would like to devote this first space flight to the people of communism, a society which our Soviet people are already entering into.
And that's why we, the Soviet people, feel perfectly. Why we are in a good mood. Why we are happy. We build communism.
Communism is the best place for a person, and the best life is the material and spiritual goods for a person.
Father was a devoted communist, such utopian. He really believed that we can catch up with America, that we should live better, and that we have everything for this purpose. He read much. He read fairy tales and did not read memoirs at all, especially military ones. Told, "Everyone say lies. I do not want to read it." In this summer residence, there was a staff, and a gardener from former life lived. He loved this gardener. They planted a kitchen garden, his favorite tomatoes, a potato. He found for himself such occupations. A belt line was his beloved child. It was put into operation just before his removal, and he loved to speak. "Let's sit in a car and go on the ring. We shall look." And then he was occupied by these memoirs. Certainly, it was entertainment for him. It distracted him, probably, but reduced his life, I think.
And when, in 1967, Nikita Sergeyevich began to dictate memoirs, he was strongly pressed to stop this. Kirienko pressed him. They quarreled. He told Kirienko they could take away his pension, everything, but he would earn as a mechanic. You'll not be able to be a mechanic anymore. Then I'll beg, and people will give me, and they will not give you.
I held a microphone, and Nikita Sergeyevich spoke about the memoirs.
How he entered into a house where an already mad woman had cut up the corpse of her child and said, "We have already eaten Maneshka, now we shall eat Vaneshka." When he wrote Stalin about it, Stalin simply used foul language. Actually, it was one of the reasons for his leaving his first post as the Secretary of the Central Committee of Ukraine. Some months he was only chairman of the People's Committee. Very few people knew about it. He could even be arrested because he reported on famine in the Ukraine. It's strange that nobody remembers about that.
He said that he held a pistol under a pillow to shoot himself in case they came to arrest him. 20th Congress, then Hungary, Poland. Unfortunately, it was like this, and all these terrible, icy stories with intelligentsia. This too, by the way, later he was sincerely sorry for what he did.
Riders are gunners. They are an artillery because they, so to say, give light for our infantry. You know, comrades, that the artillery prepares and accompanies an attack of infantry. It shoots above its own fighting forces. Therefore, it's necessary to be precise, to shoot an enemy, not our people.
Ekaterina Furtseva, with whom we were friends up to her death, and she always accepted me at any time, whispered sending their regards to my parents and showing on phones and on a ceiling. She said, "Could you imagine that I, Minister of Culture, do not know that all party leadership and the governments are on this exhibition? I came there in an hour. I was simply brought there."
It's impossible to agree with formal artists. Our spoils a person, another humiliates him, the third creates something unbelievable. Sculptor Ernest Nezvestny tried to protect his factory of ugly creatures before gathered people.
Nikita Sergeyevich went to all exhibitions in Moscow. That was not unexpected, though he had no time for exhibitions. It was the Cuban crisis, plenum of the Central Committee. He was tired to death. They told him there was a new exhibition, and it is necessary to go there. Previous one was in March, and he attended it. At last, they convinced him to go on the 1st of December.
There was such a case. He said, "Well, they bother me. I understand nothing in abstract painting. Bring me some of them." So I brought him reproductions of Kandinsky and Malevich. He said, "This is a naked king." He related more closely to realistic art. He really liked Avyazovsky, Levitan, Ripin.
He was always provoked. He was provoked by the secretary of the Artists' Union, Sirov V.A., and Michael Andreevich Sulov. They brought him to a picture. He told it was as a donkey, draw it with its tail, and went further. They say Khrushchev cursed. Khrushchev, in general, never cursed. His main curse was Turk. It is difficult to say why a Turk, but if he did not like somebody, he said Turk.
And he attacked Nevesny on an absolutely different question. He asked, "What do you make such things from?" "From bronze." "And where do you take it?" "It's not sold. I buy water cranes." "So it means you transfer national goods into such dung?"
Another Khrushchev's problem was when he went on a meeting concerning cultural questions. When it concerned engineers and knew everybody and could ask, for example, about the last grade of sunflower or situation on fields, which he knew was bad last time. As for these new people, he only knew Sholokov and Ehrenberg and about 20 writers.
еще там 20 писателей. Это молодежь он не знал. Тому это еще список давали.
When he was given a list of them, he didn't help them. He tried to start dialogue, as he was used before, but didn't succeed because he did not know people there. People said it was ridiculous when he mixed sculptor Golitsyn and writer Aksionov.
Он вытянул скульптора этого графика Голицына вместо Васи Аксенова.
He was simply shown where Aksionov was sitting. Aksionov was in a dark shirt, and Golitsyn a red one. Moreover, Golitsyn jumped all time, and Khrushchev decided that a jumping person was Aksionov. He told him to address a meeting, but Golitsyn refused. He said, "You are Aksionov." "No, I am not." "Will you speak?" "I was not going to." "You have to speak." "Can I read verses?" "What verses?" "Mayakovsky's."
Writer Vanda Vasilevskaya, with indignation, told about irresponsible statements made by foreign press by poet Voznesensky.
Voznesensky's supporters said she informed on him. Vasilevskaya had her own sites. She was a Polish woman. She was more dissident than Andrei Andreevich Voznesensky. Her daddy was the best friend of Pilsudski, and Pilsudski christened her. After that, she refused to have anything to do with Pilsudski, and for her belief was put in prison in Poland. Then she came to us. And another matter is that she belonged to the previous generation. When Voznesensky in Poland explained how Poland should live, she was indignant and she didn't inform, but she made a statement and there was a scandal.
We created possible conditions, but it does not mean we created conditions for possible propagation. We shall never give free play to our enemies. Never, never. You see, he said, I am not a party member. He wants to create a party from non-parties. No, you are a party member, but you and me are in different parties.
He involved himself into affairs when he believed that a reason was politician, not art. And he had conflict with Voznesensky, not because he wrote verses or had a triangular pier, which he had no idea about, but because he was involved in policy in Poland. He considered this his prerogative and could not allow him to do this.
I was pleased that for Khrushchev it was enough to knock only a fist, and the person at once became well known for a whole life. Should tell you that once there was a birthday, and Naizvestny presented him a book with his illustrations, Crime and Punishment. The book was kept up to his death.
I cannot justify Khrushchev, my father. He is responsible for everything. As for Dr. Zhivago, you understand what word is best for it. Misunderstanding. Though, certainly, for such an event, this word is not suitable. As he told later, Khrushchev did not read Dr. Zhivago. He read only information of Suslov, who also did not read Dr. Zhivago. This information indicated that it's necessary to condemn this anti-Soviet product. It was for the first time that a book was sent to the West and publication was made abroad, not legally. Khrushchev was on top, and everyone pushed him.
И вокруг этого был огромный шум. То есть Хрущев был наверху, его все толкали. Я помню даже когда-то вот Алексей Иванович Аджубей, в общем-то, человек не...
Remember once, Alexei Ivanovich Azhubej told that there were 3 misfortunes in Moscow: cancer, Spartak, Pasternak.
Спартак и Пастернак, они за Динамо болели, то есть вот... Нагнеталось. Вот давайте...
They were fans of the Dynamo football team.
Вот от расстрела Берии до Пастернака 4 года, то есть еще вот вся эта кухня не поменялась вокруг него.
There was a loud, unnecessary scandal which quarreled him with intelligentsia, and he tried to be more close to intelligentsia long ago from Kiev. I remember our house was always full of actors. In Kiev, he always talked Ukrainian with them. I was sure he divinely speaks Ukrainian, but when asked Mom, she said he spoke awful. She even was ready to fail under the ground. His Ukrainian was bad, but he liked to speak it and loved all these people.
I do not know how his memoirs were sent abroad. I took them away for safety, not for printing. When Khrushchev started to write, he said, "I should tell you the truth about Stalin. You do not understand. I know these authorities 1,000 times better than you. They will find them and take back." I said that I knew a place. I worked with the son of General Shumilov, who was in Stalingrad with Khrushchev. He suggested to hide the memoirs in a toilet. I did not tell the father anything about it. Memoirs were passed as in a film. 17 instants of spring. I came to lecture on faculty, put a cassette in his portfolio and left. The father said they would find it anywhere. Then I found a person who was going to hide papers with his mother-in-law in England. We agreed to hide in England, but not to publish. This person wanted to publish very much because he wanted money. Then they agreed to publish if papers are taken away. He managed to send these memoirs abroad, said Andropov helped him, and Administration Services Number 1, Administration Services Number 2 was shadowing him and me.
It was visible that the core inside is already broken. At once, he grew old. Such energy. We went on mushrooms. He took a fold-flat chair with him, and children, my sons, brought him mushrooms, and then he was summoned again concerning a publication about memoirs. As a result, there was a following heart attack. He died.
The Central Committee of the CPSU and Ministerial Council of the USSR inform with a regret that on September 11, 1971, after long illness at 78 years, the former First Secretary of the Committee of the CPSU and Chairman of the Ministerial Soviet of the USSR, a merit pensioner, Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev, died.
They say he did not want to publish at all, even the message on death. The editor of Pravda said that if I didn't publish it, I wouldn't work in the newspaper anymore. Nobody would talk to me. The message was published, even without words, with a deep regret. It was just information. And Novodevichi Cemetery was chosen simply because it was not possible to choose lower in a hierarchy. People of Khrushchev's rank are buried behind the mausoleum in a tomb, lower rank into the wall. The cemetery was surrounded, and funeral was appointed in the morning. Farewell was not in Moscow, but in a hall of Kuntsevsky Hospital, which was far away.
They quickly dug and closed the grave. There was only a very small orchestra, and that was all.
I very much loved the father, understood that I had to install a monument of the best sculptor. I asked my sister, Yulia Leonidovnu, who was close to art, who was the best sculptor. She answered, Nizvestny. And who is this? Don't you know about Manezh? I know, but not this name. He is the best sculptor. But the father quarreled with him. My friend Sergo Mikoyan and I stood on a cemetery. I told him that Yulia advised me to order Nizvestny the monument. But I didn't know how to do it if Nikita Sergeyevich quarreled with him. He called me the next day and said Nizvestny was ready to talk. The sculptor agreed to do the monument. There was such casual mess. I met Tsireteli Zurab Konstantinovich and told about the monument to Khrushchev. Tsireteli decided to do it himself, took me to the cemetery, made measuring by steps and told space was not enough. 6 by 8 meters were required. He was going to make a monument up to a ceiling. I told there was no money to have the monument up to a ceiling. He answered, money was not a question.
Проходит 3 дня. У меня была одна знакомая, которая, так сказать, сотрудничала с органами. Так сказать, негласно.
In 3 days, I was privately informed about a big scandal.
Там, говорит, такой скандал идет, говорит.
They said Sergei invented one more dirty trick.
Мы следили, арестовать хотели.
A monument would be made by Nizvestny from one side and by the Georgian from the other side.
Памятник собирается делать с одной стороны неизвестный, с другой стороны грузин.
And I was already shadowed after memoirs transfer. Since then, I have never seen Zurab. He disappeared forever. Nizvestny was told he would never receive the state premium for his work in Zelenograd if he made this monument.
Когда мне позвонили и сказали, будешь памятник Хрущеву за свою работу в Зеленограде.
When they told me this, I made the final decision.
Когда они мне сказали, что я премию не получил, я принял окончательное решение.
Биография Сталина — это его биография тоже.
Stalin's biography and his biography too. Nevertheless, he decided to do this. Now, it sounds not truly, but he all the same tried to remove KGB from our life as much as possible. He believed that if instead of the general, the party person would sit there, it would be better. But he was the person of his time. I think that this is the main thing.
Вот какую-то человечность он пытался привнести в политику.
Чем же им Хрущев так плохо? Сам виноват, потерял бдительность. Обложили, как волка. Видать, усатого забыли. Придется напомнить. Ничего. Я и в бараний рог сахну. Я им глаза на жопу натяну. Они навлекут на свою жопу приключения. У меня преданный экипаж. Сяду в Киеве, мы им с Кошевым такую Кузькину мать покажем, что будут только лететь впереди и радоваться. Кто поймет, в послы куда-нибудь в Африку, пожалуйста, я не против. Кто нет, за борт. А Леню, предателей этих комсомольцев вшивых, которые его на это подвели, к стенке. Я всем, как курям, голову поотрываю.
Когда его отправили на пенсию.
When he was sent on pension, I met him at a gate of house number 40 on highway Vorobevskoy.
Сказал, все, в отставке. He
gave me a portfolio and said, that's all, I am in resignation. But if I made for the whole life only this, that now it is possible to send the first person on pension without blood, I would believe that I lived my life not in vain.
I should tell you that just happened so that a plenum elected him the first secretary of the Central Committee. I came back with him from Moscow to a summer residence. I knew that a plenum had this agenda, and in the car I asked, "Who was chosen?" He answered, "Me." I was struck dumb for 2 seconds, then asked, "Well, aren't you afraid?" He said, "No."
The falling leaves drift by my window. The autumn leaves of red and gold. I see your lips, the summer kisses, the sunburned hands I used to hold.
Nikita Sergeyevich said in a conversation, "When I die, people will put on scales all I made good and all I made bad, my mistakes, errors, and maybe even crimes. All the same, the goods will be heavier."
I'll hear, oh, winter's song, but I miss you most of all, my darling. When autumn leaves start to fall.